At a small-town auction, a rugged mountain man shocked everyone when he raised his hand, not for cattle, but for a dog so massive it looked like a bear. The crowd laughed at his foolish choice, but what happened afterward would silence every skeptic in the most unbelievable way. The mountain town's auction yard buzzed with the usual noise of cattle lowing and men haggling over feed prices. Among them walked Samuel, a rugged man with weathered hands and a beard touched by silver. He rarely came to town, preferring the solitude of his cabin tucked deep in the Rockies. Today, he was only here for supplies. Nothing more. At the far end of the yard, chained to a post, stood a dog so massive that murmurs rippled through the crowd. Its coat was a wild mix of black and gold, thick as a bear's pelt, and its eyes burned with a strange intelligence. Too big, too wild. One rancher muttered. Another chuckled. That ain't a dog, that's a mistake. The auctioneer started low, but no hands went up. No one wanted the beast. And yet, something in Samuel stirred. Ignoring the laughter, he raised his hand. The gavel fell. Against all odds, the giant dog was his. The giant dog sat in the wagon bed, unmoving, his golden eyes fixed on Samuel as if studying him. Samuel stole glances, uneasy. What had he just brought into his life? When they reached the cabin, the dog padded out heavily, each step shaking the wooden porch. Inside, Samuel set down food, an entire pot of stew scraps. The beast devoured it in moments, licking the bowl clean before sitting upright, expectant. Samuel chuckled under his breath. Guess I'll need bigger pots. But it wasn't just the appetite. The dog's size made the cabin feel smaller, his deep bark echoing like thunder through the valley. More than once Samuel muttered, "What was I thinking?" And yet, at night, when the mountain winds howled, the dog lay by the door, ears twitching. At every sound, for the first time in years, Samuel felt no fear of the dark. By the following week, word of Samuel's strange purchase had spread through the small mountain town like wildfire. He bought that giant mutt at the auction? Fool thing to do, one scoffed. Others weren't so sure. I've seen dogs like that, an older rancher whispered. Not pets, guardians. They'll fight wolves head on. His words drew raised brows, but doubts still lingered. Women at the post office clutched letters tighter, gossiping about the beast roaming Samuel's land. It's too big, one said. What if it turns on him? Or worse, wanders into town? Children, however, told the story differently. They imagined the dog as a bear disguised in fur, a creature born from the mountains themselves. Wide-eyed, they whispered about Samuel riding the giant like a horse through the snow. Rumors swirled, curiosity grew, and all eyes turned toward the mountain cabin. Samuel, meanwhile, went about his days, unaware, or perhaps unconcerned, that his new companion had become the most talked-about creature in town. The first real test came one stormy night. The wind howled through the pines, rattling shutters and snapping branches like twigs. Samuel stepped outside to secure the barn door when a shadow darted across the tree-line. A pair of glowing eyes locked on him. Wolf, before Samuel could react. The giant dog lunged past him, a blur of fur and muscle. With a deep, thunderous growl, he drove the predator back into the woods. The clash was brief but fierce, and when the dog returned, chest heaving, the wolf was gone. Samuel exhaled, stunned. Good boy, he whispered, voice thick with awe. From that night on, something shifted. Samuel no longer saw the giant as a burden, but as a partner. The dog trailed him faithfully during long treks into the mountains, alert to every rustle and scent. At the cabin, he rested by the fire, eyes half closed yet always watchful. For a man who had lived years in silence and solitude, companionship had returned. And with it, trust, something Samuel thought he'd lost forever. It happened during the thaw, when snowmelt turned mountain trails into rivers of mud. Samuel was hauling timber down a narrow pass when the earth gave way. With a thunderous crack, the slope collapsed, sending logs tumbling like matchsticks. Samuel slipped, the ground vanishing beneath him. In a heartbeat, he was dangling over a sheer drop, clinging to a single root. His strength was fading, the roar of the river below rising to meet him. Panic surged, until a shadow loomed above. The giant dog. With a growl that echoed like thunder, the beast scrambled down the crumbling ledge. His massive jaws clamped onto Samuel's coat, teeth gripping the thick fabric. Muscles straining, the dog heaved, paws digging furrows into the earth. Inch by inch, he dragged Samuel back to solid ground. When Samuel collapsed, gasping, the dog stood over him, chest heaving, eyes fierce. For a moment, Samuel swore he saw something more than instinct in those eyes, something almost human. Back in town, the story spread quickly. The mountain man's dog had hauled him from the edge of death. People no longer laughed. They called it unbelievable. But truth be why the time Samuel made it back to town, the tale had already grown. Farmers at the feed store spoke of a giant dog that pulled a man from death itself. Even the skeptics couldn't ignore the story. Men who once mocked Samuel now tipped their hats in quiet respect. Women who once whispered in fear now stopped him on the street, eager to glimpse the dog that had proven braver than most men. When Samuel walked through the market with the giant at his side, conversations hushed. The dog towered over others. But instead of menace, he carried an air of calm strength. His golden eyes scanned the crowd, watchful yet gentle. For the first time in years, Samuel wasn't seen as a reclusive mountain man. He was seen as the one chosen by a creature unlike any other. Together, man and dog had become legends in their own time. One evening, Samuel sat by the fire, brushing the dog's thick coat when he noticed an old scar beneath the fur, a brand. Faint but still visible. Curious, he asked around town, and an elderly rancher's face went pale when he saw it. "That's no ordinary dog," the man whispered. "He's from a rare line, bred to guard entire herds against bears and mountain lions. They were so valuable, most were sold off to wealthy landowners. If this one ended up at auction, someone either didn't know what they had or didn't care." The revelation struck Samuel. This wasn't just a giant dog by chance. He had been trained, molded by generations for strength, courage, and loyalty. Somewhere in his past, he had been abandoned or lost. Samuel looked into the dog's steady golden eyes and felt a kinship deeper than words. Both had scars, both had been cast aside by the world, yet both had found purpose again in each other. From that moment, Samuel no longer thought of him as a purchase. He was family. Seasons changed in the mountains, but one thing remained constant: Samuel and his giant dog, side by side. Each morning, they trekked the ridges, the dog's massive frame breaking paths through snowdrifts, his presence a shield against every danger. At night, he lay by the hearth, a silent guardian of the cabin. Samuel often thought back to the day of the auction, when laughter followed his every step. If only they could see now, the man who once lived in silence had found companionship, purpose, and protection in the very creature they mocked. Looking into the golden eyes of his companion, Samuel whispered, "You weren't a mistake. You were the best thing that ever happened to me." Sometimes, the greatest treasures aren't gold or land. Sometimes, they walk beside you on four giant paws.